At Thanksgiving, Dad announced. I only trust one child. Then raised his glass toward the son who wouldn't meet my eyes. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Gravy dripped back onto the plate in slow motion, thick and brown, and somewhere down the table my cousin's kid was still talking about Minecraft like a bomb hadn't just gone off in the middle of the table. The overhead light glinted off Dad's wine glass as he held it in the air, his other hand braced on the edge of the table like he was making a speech in Parliament rather than at the same scratched oak table we'd eaten fish fingers at as kids. Everyone laughed the way people laugh when they're not sure if they're supposed to, too loud, watching his face. My brother, Luke, kept staring at the candle in front of him, jaw clenched, thumb rubbing hard at a spot on the stem of his glass. He didn't look at Dad. He definitely didn't look at me. It was last November, the first Thanksgiving we'd all done, properly, since COVID and the first one I'd agreed to come to since starting therapy. I'm 29F, Luke is 31M, and I'm still not sure if this story belongs on r/true off my chest or r/raised by narcissists or some mash-up subreddit called r/this is so messy I don't even know. I keep replaying that moment in my head. Dad's words, the way the room shifted around them, how my brother's shoulders hunched like someone had just dropped a coat of bricks on his back, and wondering when exactly things got so twisted that a father could say something like that and believe he was paying a compliment. To understand why that stupid toast felt like a knife, you kind of need to know how trust works in my family. Spoiler, it doesn't mean what most people think it means. In my dad's vocabulary, trust is code for obeys me without question. And from as far back as I can remember, there was always one child who did that better than the other. Luke was the golden boy from day one. Blonde hair, loud laugh, natural at any sport you put in front of him. Teachers loved him. Neighbors loved him. Relatives pinched his cheeks at Christmas and said things like, "He's going to break some hearts one day, Sue." And Mum would blush and say, "He already does." Dad would grin like he'd built Luke himself in the shed. I was there. I was small and serious and apparently too sensitive. I read books under the table at family gatherings and cried when people raised their voices. I preferred drawing quietly in the corner to being passed around like a prize ham. When relatives commented, it was mostly variations of, "She's shy, that one," or, "Well, you can't have two the same, can you?" Our whole dynamic was laid out for us in 1,000 tiny interactions. If Luke forgot to take the bins out, Mum would sigh and say, "Boys," and do it herself. If I forgot, Dad would lecture me for 20 minutes about responsibility and how no man is ever going to want a wife who can't remember simple tasks. If Luke got into a fight at school, Dad would talk about standing up for yourself. When I snapped back at Luke after hours of teasing and he fake cried to Mom, I got sent to my room for bullying. The first time I remember Dad using the actual word trust in the way that would come to haunt me, I was 12. Luke was 14. Dad had gotten one of those DIY CCTV systems for the house, the kind with 4 cameras and a cheap black and white monitor that made everyone look like criminals even when they were just taking the washing off the line. He was in his element, drilling things into the eaves and running cables through the roof. "Why do we need cameras?" I'd asked, standing on the lawn in my school uniform, backpack still on. "In case someone breaks in," he said. "Nobody's going to break in," Luke said, kicking a soccer ball against the fence. "We don't have anything worth stealing." Dad frowned at him. "We've got my tools," he said. "And your mother's jewelry. And my kids. That's what's worth something." "You can't CCTV us," I joked. "What if I want to sneak out?" It was a harmless comment, me trying on teenager humor for size, but Dad's face darkened. He turned to Luke, not me. "See? This is why I can't trust her," he said. "Always thinking about how to get around the rules." "I was joking," I protested. He ignored me. "If anything happens, you're the one I'm relying on, mate," he said to Luke. "You've got a good head on your shoulders. You know right from wrong." It was said lightly, like a compliment, but it lodged in me like a splinter. I remember going to my room that night and staring at my reflection in the mirror, wondering what about my face made him think I was untrustworthy. Fast forward through high school and you see the pattern everywhere. When there was a problem, Dad would go to Luke. "What really happened?" he'd ask, even if I was standing right there. If I told him I felt sick and didn't want to go to school, he'd narrow his eyes, call Luke into the room, and say, "Does your sister look sick to you?" As if my own testimony wasn't enough. "You can't just take her word for it," he'd say. He never said, "I only trust one child," back then, but he didn't have to. We both felt it. Luke was the one he took fishing, the one he taught to change the oil in the car, the one he confided in about work stuff. I was the one he told to put the kettle on and help your mother. It wasn't that Luke was cruel to me all the time. Sometimes he was sweet in the way golden children can afford to be, throwing me his extra dessert, letting me ride his skateboard, ruffling my hair. But when there was a choice between me and Dad, he always chose Dad. When Dad made one of his little digs, "Em's got her head in the clouds again, Em's off with the fairies, Em rewrites history like a politician," Luke would laugh. Sometimes he'd add his own, "She's always been dramatic, haven't you?" I internalized it so deeply I didn't even see it as unfair. It was just the way things were. He's the one they trust. You are not. When I was 19, I left for uni in another city. Dad stood by the boot of my old Corolla and crossed his arms. "Don't forget where you come from," he said. "I won't," I said, hugging my box of books like a life raft. "And don't you be filling your head with nonsense," he added. "Some of those courses brainwash you. Make you think your parents are the bad guys." I laughed weakly. "I'm studying social work, Dad." "Exactly," he said, like he'd made my point for me. "All that talk about trauma. People these days don't know how good they've got it." Luke was there too, leaning against the fence, hands in his hoodie pockets. He was apprenticing with Dad by then, working in the family construction business. He'd hugged me quickly, looking over his shoulder like Dad might revoke his man card if he saw too much emotion. "You'll be back in 6 months," he'd said. "You can't survive without Mum's cooking." He meant it as a tease. It felt like a prediction. He was wrong, though. I stayed. Barely, but I stayed. I worked in a cafe, ate instant noodles, had panic attacks in tiny student housing bathrooms, and slowly, started to see that not every family operated like mine. My friends' parents called them to ask how they were, not to monologue about their own days. When my roommate cried, I sat with her, and nobody called that attention-seeking. I didn't cut contact with my family. I called on Sundays because Mom would worry otherwise. I came home for Christmas and the occasional birthday. But there was distance now, physical, sure, but also in my head. I started noticing the way Dad turned every conversation into a test. How he'd say things like, "So you still think your degree is useful?" instead of, "How's uni? And what do they teach you in those classes?" He'd ask, "That your childhood was terrible?" "No," I'd say, chest tight. "They teach us how to listen to people." He'd snort, "You've always been too soft. That's your problem. You believe any sob story." I graduated at 23 and got a job at a community mental health center back in my uni city. Dad called it a call center for crazy people. Like it was a joke. Mom asked why I couldn't move home and work somewhere normal, like the council. Luke stayed in the same orbit as always. He got promoted to site supervisor in Dad's business, moved into a nice townhouse 15 minutes from my parents, got engaged to his high school girlfriend, had a baby by 27. My parents babysat every week. They took photos at the park, Easter egg hunts, Grandparents' Day, at preschool. They had a whole separate social life built around Luke's kids. When I visited, I felt like a guest star on the Luke show. "Oh, you're here!" Mum would say, surprised, like I'd dropped out of a plane. We hardly ever see you. I was here 3 weeks ago. I'd say. That's not the same, she'd reply. You missed Lily's concert. I'd been at work, but that never counted. In their minds, my job wasn't real because it didn't involve hard hats or tax returns. 2 years ago, I started therapy. Properly started, I mean, not just going twice and ghosting. It was after a particularly bad Christmas where Dad made a toast that included the words, "Emily used to be such a happy child before the world turned her into a victim." And everyone laughed. I went home, lay on my kitchen floor, and stared at the ceiling for an hour. I think there's something wrong with me, I told Dr. K the first session. I overreact to normal things. I feel wrong. All the time. She listened, and then she said something that changed my life in this quiet, seismic way. Given what you've described, your reactions sound very understandable. It took us months to even touch my childhood in detail. We spent a long time in the present, my burnout, my people-pleasing at work, the way I'd have a full-blown panic response to any text from my parents that started with, "We need to talk." But slowly the stories came. Orange juice on the PlayStation. Burnt toast. Being ignored when I said I was scared. So it wasn't that bad, I'd say after each story. Nothing that dramatic. She'd tilt her head, eyebrows knitted. It sounds like it was bad for you, she'd say. That's enough. One day I said, half joking, "My dad always says he can only trust one child." And she actually put her pen down. He says that? Well, not literally, not like that. I backtracked. He just, acts like Luke's the responsible one and I'm the flake. What would it mean if he did say it literally? She asked. I don't know, I said. He basically does, all the time. Luke is the one he goes to about everything. They talk about money and work and, I don't know, grown-up things. I'm the one who messes stuff up. Does that match the reality of your adult lives? She asked. Kind of, I said. I moved away. I'm in therapy. I have panic attacks. Luke has his life together. Does having panic attacks make you untrustworthy? She asked. Logically, no. Emotionally, my body screamed yes. Anyway, that was the backdrop going into last Thanksgiving. Mum started the campaign in October. Family dinner at ours this year. Proper Thanksgiving like old times. Everyone home. No excuses. Group chat. All caps. Maple leaf emoji for some reason. We are not Canadian. I ignored it for a week. She followed up. You'll come, won't you? Dad's really looking forward to having everyone together. That sent a spike of something through me. Dread, mostly. I screenshotted it and sent it to my friend Jess. Do I go? I don't want to. But also I feel guilty. She replied instantly. Do you have the bandwidth to handle them right now? Define bandwidth, I wrote back. In therapy, we unpacked it. What are you afraid will happen if you don't go? Dr. K asked. They'll be angry, I said. They'll call me selfish. They'll talk about me behind my back. And I'll miss out on seeing my niece and nephew. And what are you afraid will happen if you do go? That they'll be themselves, I said. The comments. The digs. The way they act like my life is optional. And I'll be right back to being 15. She didn't tell me what to do. She never does. But we talked about setting boundaries, about having an exit plan, about recognizing when my body was telling me, enough. In the end I went. Partly for Lily and Max, who are now 6 and 4 and still greet me at the door like I'm Santa. Partly because some masochistic part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, they'd have softened. That Dad would pull me into a hug and say, I'm proud of you. Spoiler, he did not. When I arrived, Mum was in full hostess mode. Apron, flushed cheeks, 2 ovens going. The house smelled like roast turkey and onions and the faint whiff of bleach she uses on everything. There she is! she said, kissing me because her hands were covered in something. You're late. It's 1:05, I said. Dinner was supposed to be at 1, she said. But of course we can't start without you. Luke and his family were already there. His wife, Hannah, gave me a real hug, warm and solid. Lily threw herself at my waist. Max attached himself to my leg like a koala. You're here, Emmy, Lily said. I made a thankful leaf for you at school. She ran to the fridge and brought back a paper cutout that said Auntie M in shaky letters. I almost cried on the spot. Dad emerged from the lounge with a beer, chuckling at something on the TV. He gave me his standard side hug, pat on the back. You made it then, he said. I thought your busy life might get in the way. Hi to you too, I said. He grinned like he'd scored a point. Always so serious, he said. We're glad you're here. Family's important. Yeah, I said. It is. The afternoon passed in the usual blur. Mum barking orders in the kitchen. Hannah trying to help and being shooed away. Luke and Dad watching football, making expert comments about players like they weren't just two dudes in trackies on a couch. The kids running laps of the house, high on anticipation and the bowl of M&Ms Mum had put out for decoration. There were little moments like landmines. At one point, Mum asked how work was. Busy, I said. Lots of crisis calls lately. It's been rough. She wrinkled her nose. I don't know how you do that job, she said. Listening to people complain all day. Makes you soft. Or empathetic, I said before I could stop myself. Same thing, Dad muttered from the couch. Another time, Lily asked me if I'd ever been married. Before I could answer, Dad called out from the other room. No, love, your Auntie M is married to her job. Isn't that right? Everyone laughed. I smiled tightly. Hannah caught my eye and winced in sympathy. By the time we sat down to eat, I was already buzzing with that familiar jittery energy, the kind that feels like you drank 10 coffees and also swallowed a hornet. I took the seat halfway down the table, opposite Hannah, diagonal from Dad at the head and Luke to his right. The honor seat. The table was laid out beautifully, Mum's one true love. White tablecloth, mismatched but charming plates, candles in glass jars, a paper turkey Lily had made at school in the center. Everyone passed dishes around, making small talk. And then, as Mum finally sat down with her own plate and exhaled like she'd just run a marathon, Dad picked up his wine. Right, he said loud enough that the kids stopped talking. Before we tuck in, I want to say something. My stomach clenched. These little speeches rarely ended well. He smiled around the table, doing that politician thing where he seemed to make eye contact with everyone individually. I was thinking today, he said, how lucky your mother and I are. We've got a roof over our heads, food on the table, our health. He paused, as if waiting for someone to chime in. Nobody did. And we've got 2 children who are very different. He looked at me when he said, very different. I felt my cheeks heat. Both good kids in their way, he continued. One's always been a bit free spirit. Off doing her own thing. Always with her head in books, bit dramatic, but she's got a good heart. The other. He turned to Luke, beaming. The other has been my right hand. Stuck by us. Helped with the business. Given us grandkids. Someone I know I can rely on. There was a beat of silence. My fork hovered over the turkey. Hannah's eyes were flicking between us like she was watching a tennis match in hell. So I just want to say, Dad went on, lifting his glass higher, I only trust one child. And here his voice warmed, edges softening. And that's this bloke right here. He raised his glass toward Luke. Luke wouldn't meet my eyes. Mum laughed a little too loudly. Oh, Mike, she said, swatting his arm. Don't say that. What? He said, grinning. It's true. He's earned it. Lily frowned. You said you trusted me when I helped you fix the gate, she said, small but clear. Everyone chuckled. Dad leaned over and kissed her head. "Course I trust you too, Petal," he said. "You're special. I'm talking about grown-ups." Max banged his spoon on the table. "Me too," he yelled. "Especially you," Dad said absently, eyes still on Luke. The conversation moved on. Mum started fussing about getting the gravy jug back, someone asked Hannah about her job, the kids whined about the lack of chips. But in my head, everything had gone slightly slow and fuzzy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I stared at my plate, appetite gone, and tried to talk myself out of reacting. "He's just joking. He doesn't mean it. Don't make a scene. Don't be dramatic. It's not that deep." And yet, my heart was racing. My hands were cold. There was a ringing in my ears. It felt like being 12 again, watching him install cameras and tell my brother, "You're the one I trust." Only this time, it was public. Official. Toasted. "Em?" Hannah's voice cut through the fog. "Do you want the potatoes?" I realized I'd been staring at the same spot on the tablecloth for too long. Everyone was looking at me. "Yeah," I said, voice too bright. "Sorry. Zoned out." "Like always," Dad said, chuckling. "The rest of the meal is a blur." I know I ate because later there were smear marks on my plate, but I couldn't tell you what anything tasted like. I answered questions on autopilot. "Yes, work is busy." "No, I'm not seeing anyone." "Yes, my rent is ridiculous." Haha, millennials, right? At some point, the kids were released from the table and thundered down the hall. Mum started collecting plates even though she'd barely eaten. Hannah tried to help, got told to sit down. Luke talked to Dad about a contract they were bidding on. I sat there, hands in my lap, and felt this thick, old anger rise up under my ribs. Usually I swallowed it. Usually I turned it on myself. "You're overreacting. You're too sensitive." But Therapy Brain was online now too. Therapy Brain was saying, "Okay, but what if you're not? What if it's actually shitty for a parent to toast? I only trust one child." With the other sitting right there? I caught Luke's eye then. Only for a second, across the flowers and the gravy boat. He dropped his gaze immediately, cheeks flushing, mouth tightening. Shame rolled off him like heat. That hurt more than Dad's toast, somehow. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly. "I'm just going to get some air," I said, not really caring who I was talking to. Mum turned, dish in hand. "Oh, can't you help?" "I'll be 2 minutes," I said. "I just need air." I walked out the sliding door onto the back deck. The cool evening hit me like a slap. The sky was that weird pastel purple, neighbor's fairy lights already on even though it wasn't fully dark. I gripped the wooden railing until my fingers ached and concentrated on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth, 4 counts in, 6 out, like Dr. K drilled. I could still hear them inside, the clink of plates, Mum's voice, Dad laughing at something, the murmur of Hannah's polite responses. A train went past in the distance, that low, comforting rumble. I stared at the avocado tree Dad had planted when we were kids. It had never borne fruit. He blamed the soil. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with numb fingers. A text from Jess. "How's Thanksgiving? Still alive?" I stared at the little blinking cursor, then typed, "Dad just toasted. I only trust one child," and raised his glass to Luke. She replied so fast I wondered if she'd been waiting with the keyboard open. "Oh my God! That's cartoon villain level. Are you okay?" "Yes/no," I wrote back. "Do you need an extraction?" she replied. The idea of her showing up in my Corolla like some kind of chaotic guardian angel made me snort laugh, which immediately turned into a sob. "Can't," I replied. "Lily would be devastated if I vanished. I'll survive. Just needed to scream at someone." "Consider me screamed at," she wrote. "Therapist Brain says that's abuse. Friend Brain says, he's an asshole. Both brains say, you don't deserve that." A tear slipped down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. Being upset felt like proving them right about me being dramatic. The sliding door opened behind me. I tensed. "Hey," Luke said quietly. "You okay?" I turned, leaning back on the railing. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the chill. For a second, he looked like the teenage version of himself again, the one who'd sneaked me extra dessert when Mum was on a diet kick. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just needed air." He winced. "Yeah," he said. "That was a bit much." "A bit much," I repeated. "Cool." He sighed. "You know what he's like," he said. "He doesn't mean anything by it." My anger, which had cooled into hurt, flared again. "He literally said he only trusts one child," I said. "In front of both of us. What exactly does he mean by that, if not what it sounds like?" Luke shifted his weight. "He's had a few drinks," he said weakly. "He's proud of me. That's all." "That's all," I echoed. "Great. I'm really happy he chose Thanksgiving to let us know he thinks I'm untrustworthy. Super festive." He flinched. "Good. And you couldn't even look at me," I added, heat rising. "You just sat there and let him do it." "I didn't ask him to say it," he snapped. "I know," I said. "But you also didn't say, 'Actually, Dad, that's unfair and kind of fucked up.'" His eyes flashed. "What, like you did?" I laughed, harsh. "You're right. I didn't either. I walked away instead because if I start something in there, Mum will cry and Dad will say I ruined the night." He opened his mouth, closed it again. "It's not that simple," he said. "It is," I said. "To him, trust is obedience. You obey, so you're trustworthy. I object, so I'm not. That's it. That's the whole equation." He ran a hand through his hair, agitated. "It's complicated," he repeated. We stood there in tense silence for a minute, the sounds of the house muffled behind us. "Do you have any idea how that felt?" I asked quietly. He looked at me properly then, really looked. His face softened. "Yeah," he said. "I do." I raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" He swallowed. He puts everything on me," he said. "The business, Mum, the house. You're the only one I can rely on, Luke. You're the only one I trust, Luke. It's a lot." I blinked. I hadn't expected that. "You like it," I said, more uncertain than I meant to. "You love being the golden boy." He grimaced like I'd slapped him and hit a nerve simultaneously. "Maybe when I was a kid," he said. "Now it feels like I'm on a leash. If I say no to anything, he acts like I've killed him." I frowned. "Like what?" He opened his mouth, closed it. "Forget it," he said. "It doesn't matter." Somewhere inside, a light flicked on. His refusal to meet my eyes at the table. The way he kept rubbing his thumb on that glass. The flash of shame when Dad said, "Trust." "What's going on, Luke?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not here," he muttered. "Another time." Inside, Mum called, "Kids! Dessert!" in that high-pitched voice she uses for group announcements. Luke straightened. The conversation was being shelved whether I liked it or not. "We should go back in," he said. "Mum'll lose it if we're not in the photos." "Let her lose it," I muttered. He gave me a look. "You're not the one she calls at 11 p.m., he said. "Come on." We went back inside. Posed for photos. Ate pumpkin pie. Acted like nothing had happened. When I left that night, Mum hugged me at the door and said, "Next time, don't be a stranger. Your father worries he doesn't see you enough. Maybe he should trust his other child to visit." I said, then regretted it the second it left my mouth. She frowned. "Don't start," she said. "You know how he is. He doesn't mean anything by it." On the drive home, my phone buzzed with a text from Luke. Sorry about earlier. The toast. He crossed the line. I stared at it at red lights, thumb hovering. Yeah, he did, I wrote back. We need to talk, he replied. About what? Not over text. Coffee sometime? Just us. That ping-ponged around my brain for days. Part of me was suspicious. What did he want? Another part, the 8-year-old who used to lie in his bunk bed while he told me stories in the dark, was hopeful. We met the next Sunday at a cafe halfway between our places. He was already there when I arrived, fidgeting with a sugar packet. He looked older than I'd let myself notice. Fine lines around his eyes, slight slump in his shoulders. Hey, he said. Hey, I replied, sitting. We did the small talk dance, work, kids, weather. Then he took a breath like he was about to dive underwater. I did something stupid, he said. My stomach clenched. Okay. He laughed humorlessly. Well, a series of stupid things, he corrected. Mostly to do with Dad and the business. I sipped my coffee. I figured, I said. Given how often he brings it up. Luke's keeping the business going. Luke's the only one who understands the business. Luke this, Luke that. He winced. Yeah, he said. About that. He told me, haltingly at first, then in a rushing torrent, about how Dad had slowly entangled him in everything. Started with little things. Just sign here, mate, it's for the bank, guarantees the overdraft. Put your name on this truck, you'll own it on paper. Just co-sign this lease with me, they like seeing younger blood. I didn't read half of it, he admitted, face burning. He'd shove stuff at me in the UTA, say we were in a rush, and I'd sign. He's my dad. I trusted him. The irony of that word did not escape either of us. And? I asked, dread curling in my gut. And now the business is in the shit, he said flatly. He's been borrowing to cover bad months. The loan rates went up. A couple of big contracts fell through. The insurance claim on that job last year didn't pay out. And the bank has started sending letters addressed to both of us. Because I'm on everything. As guarantor. As co-owner. As you name it. He rubbed his face. If it all goes south, they can come after my house, he said. My actual house. Hannah's house. The kid's house. My coffee suddenly tasted metallic. Jesus, Luke. Yeah, he said hollowly. Jesus, Luke indeed. Have you talked to a lawyer? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. What, last month? He was not impressed. Said some of the stuff Dad did toes the line of financial abuse. Especially getting me to sign things without explaining. But because I did sign, it's messy. It's not like he forged my signature. My brain spun. Does Hannah know? Some, he said. Not all. She knows we're in debt. She doesn't know how tied up I am in Dad's shit. We sat in silence for a moment, the clink of cups and low murmur of other patrons filler around us. So when he made that toast, I said slowly, about trusting you. Luke let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, he said. All I could think was, of course you trust me. I'm the idiot who signed his life over to you. He looked at me then, eyes bloodshot. And all I could think looking at you was, I didn't warn you sooner. I went along with his version of you for years. I laughed when he called you dramatic. I didn't back you when you tried to speak up. And now you're the one he doesn't have hooks into. I blinked hard. I hadn't expected this. An apology? From Luke? My body didn't know what to do with it. He does have hooks into me, I said automatically. Just different ones. He shook his head. Not like this, he said, tapping his chest. Not with your livelihood. Your house. He can't bankrupt you. Yet, I said, half joking. He didn't smile. I'm serious, Em, he said. You got out. He can still make you feel like shit, but he can't sign away your future. I can't say the same. I swallowed. What do you need from me? He hesitated. I'm not asking you to fix it, he said. I know that's unfair. I just needed you to know the full picture. When he said he trusted me, it wasn't some magical compliment. It was him publicly confirming what he's been doing in private. I thought of Dad in the lounge, telling teenage Luke he was the only one who understands hard work. Then asking him to help with tax stuff. Of Luke at 12 being asked who broke the lamp and choosing Dad's side. Of me at 25, telling Mum about a panic attack and hearing, "Well, don't tell your father, he'll only worry." Why did you trust him? I asked gently. With all that paperwork. He stared at his hands. Because he's Dad, he said simply. Because he told me I was the only one he could rely on. Because it felt good to be the favorite once. We let that sit between us. I'm sorry, he said eventually, voice thick. For all the times I left you hanging. For not speaking up when he made those comments. For laughing. For all of it. I stared at him. My throat hurt. You don't get to say sorry on behalf of both of you, I said. I know, he said quickly. I'm not. He'll never admit he's wrong. You know that. I'm just apologizing for me. For my part. A part of me had been waiting for that for 20 years. Another part wanted to push it away, to say it was too little too late. Both parts were loud. I appreciate it. I managed. We talked for another hour. About lawyers. About options. About him maybe separating his personal finances from the business, stepping back, letting Dad deal with the mess he'd made. What happens if you do that? I asked. Dad will say I betrayed him, he said. He'll tell everyone I abandoned the family. He'll probably show up at my house and scream on the lawn. Yeah, I said. That sounds right. He looked at me. You've been living with this version of him longer than I have, he said. How do you handle it? I almost laughed. Badly? I said. With lots of crying in therapy and writing long unsent letters and considering blocking his number every second Tuesday. He smiled weakly. Maybe I should get a therapist. I raised my eyebrows. Careful, I said. Dad thinks they rot your brain. Yeah, well, he said. My brain's already half wood pulp from stress. We left it at that. He'd talk to his lawyer again. I'd keep surviving. A month later, Dad had a minor heart scare. Not a full-blown heart attack, thank God, but enough chest pain to land him in hospital overnight. Mum sent a frantic text at 2 a.m. Dad in hospital. Don't panic. Don't panic is, of course, the fastest way to make me panic. I lay awake all night, imagining him dying, imagining never getting closure, imagining having to grieve and also process decades of resentment at the same time. In the morning, Luke called. He's okay, he said. They think it was angina. They're doing more tests. I exhaled. My shoulders dropped a fraction. Okay, I said. I'm at the hospital, he added. Mum's here. They want to talk about power of attorney stuff, future planning, all that. My stomach flipped. Already? Doctors recommended it, he said. Given his age, the stress, the business. They want to make sure someone can make decisions if he can't. Let me guess, I said. He only trusts one child. Luke sighed. Pretty much, he said. He wants me to be power of attorney. For medical and financial. Sign everything. Take care of Mum. The works. Of course he does, I said. There was a pause. I told him no, Luke said. I sat up. You what? I told him no, he repeated, stronger. I said I'd help with medical decisions if needed, but I'm not signing anything financial. Not after everything. Not when he's already tied me to enough shit. I tried to imagine Dad's face. Veins popping in his forehead. Mouth tight. How did he take that? I asked. How do you think? Luke said. He said I was ungrateful. That he'd wasted his life on us. That he only asked because he thought I was the only one he could trust. Ah, the greatest hit, I said. And then he said, I suppose you expect me to ask your sister, do you? Like that was the worst thing he could imagine. Luke added. There was that splinter again. And what did you say? I said, Luke replied slowly, that if he wanted someone he could actually trust to act in his best interest, he should consider asking the one who isn't financially entangled with him. The one who works in mental health, deals with systems, and isn't, drowning in his debts. My mouth went dry. Luke, he rushed on. I didn't volunteer you, he said. I just pointed out that his whole trust thing has been backwards. That obedience isn't the same as wisdom. That you're good with this stuff. A weird mix of emotions hit me, panic, flattery, dread, anger, tenderness. What did he say? I asked. He grumbled, Luke said. Said you'd turn everything into a drama and let strangers make decisions. By strangers he means doctors. I muttered. Yeah, he said. Then Mum started crying and saying she didn't want to think about any of this. I said we needed to, because letters from the bank don't stop just because we ignore them. And now, he said, they want to have a family meeting next weekend. At their place. To talk about the future. They want you there. My whole body went cold. Do you want me there? I asked. He was quiet for a second. Yeah, he said. I do. I can't be the only one saying no anymore. I need you to. Bring your therapy brain. And your work brain. And your dad can't steamroll me as easily as he used to bring. I snorted weakly. That last one is aspirational. I said. Please, he said. I know it's a lot to ask. After everything. But I'm in over my head, Em. I don't trust him. I don't trust myself to not cave, honestly. And I trust you. The irony of that nearly knocked me over. For so long, trust had been weaponized against me. Hearing my brother say, I trust you, without sarcasm felt like someone had taken a band off my chest. Okay, I said, heart pounding. I'll come. The family meeting was exactly as awful as you'd imagine. Mum's lounge room, curtains half drawn, coffee table cleared of its usual magazines and replaced with a stack of hospital brochures. Dad in his recliner, hospital bands still on his wrist like a wristband from a gig. Luke on the couch. Me on the edge of an armchair, perched like I had one foot out the door. Dad gave a long speech about mortality, responsibility, being practical, not wanting to burden us. The whole time, I could feel the subtext humming underneath. I am still in charge. I will decide who gets the responsibility, because responsibility is power, and I am too important to leave anything to chance. So, he concluded, steepling his fingers, I think it makes sense that Luke takes on the power of attorney stuff. He's been involved in the business. He knows where everything is. He's solid. He glanced at me on the last word, like daring me to argue. Luke cleared his throat. I've told you, he said carefully. I'm not comfortable doing financial POA. Dad's jaw clenched. We've been through this, he said. I know, Luke said. But Emily and I talked, and you dragged her into this? Dad snapped, turning to me. No, I said, surprisingly steady. He asked for my perspective. Which, given what I do for a living, isn't the worst idea. Dad scoffed. Because you deal with nutcases all day, you think you're an expert? Mum gasped. Mike. It's fine, I said, even though my stomach twisted. The point is, Luke is already legally tied into a lot of your finances as it is. It's not ideal, but it's done. Adding POA on top of that puts him in a risky position if things go south. From a purely practical standpoint, it might be better to have someone not entangled in the business making financial decisions. He narrowed his eyes. You volunteering? The old me would have backpedaled. Made a joke. Said something self-deprecating. The therapy me took a breath. I'm open to it, I said slowly. On some conditions. Mum leaned forward. Conditions? Yes, I said. Full transparency about the business finances. No secrets. No just sign here. I get to see everything before I agree to anything. And we put safeguards in place so no major decisions can be made without input from both me and Luke. Especially if they affect his existing commitments. Dad's face reddened. You don't trust me. He spat. There it was. The reversal. The accusation. I swallowed. You've said my whole life that you only trust one child, I said quietly. I think it's fair that, if I'm going to be legally responsible for your stuff, I make sure I have reason to trust you. Silence. Mum dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Luke stared at his hands. Dad shook his head, disgusted. You've let that therapist of yours poison you, he said. Turn you against your own father. I'm not against you, I said. I'm against being kept in the dark and then blamed when things go wrong. He scoffed. You think you know everything, he said. You think because you went to uni and sit in an office and write notes about people crying that you're smarter than me. I don't think I'm smarter, I said, tired. I think I'm less invested in pretending everything's fine when it isn't. Mum suddenly leaned forward. Can't we just trust each other? She said weakly. I looked at her. I love that, I said. But Dad's definition of trust has always been do what I say. I'm offering a different one. One where we all see the same information and make decisions together. To my surprise, Luke backed me up. She's right, he said. This isn't about who's the favorite. It's about not screwing ourselves over. Dad glared at him like he'd committed treason. Et2, brute, he muttered. I'm tired, Dad, Luke said, voice cracking. I'm tired of carrying this alone. I'm tired of being the only one you trust, and then being blamed when stuff goes wrong. Mum burst into tears then, full on. I can't listen to you talk like this, she wailed. This family is falling apart. We used to be so close. No, I said gently. We used to be enmeshed. That's different. She sobbed harder. Listen to her. She cried to Dad. With her big words. I glanced at Luke. He met my eyes this time, and there it was, solidarity. Messy, late, imperfect solidarity, but real. In the end, nothing was fully resolved that afternoon. There was no triumphant signing of documents. Dad refused to make any decisions. While being attacked. The brochures remained on the table, untouched. But a crack had opened in the old pattern. For once, Luke and I had stood roughly on the same side. For once, Dad's word hadn't been law. In the months since, things have been fragile. Luke has quietly disentangled himself from some of the worst of the business stuff, with his lawyer's help. It's cost him, financially, emotionally. Dad has accused him of betrayal more than once. There were weeks they didn't speak. Mum oscillates between pretending none of this is happening and sending me late-night texts like, I don't know what I did wrong as a mother, which somehow still center her. Dad and I are cordial. He still makes comments. I still flinch. But something fundamental has shifted in me. That toast, as much as it hurt, did something important. It said the quiet part out loud. It forced everyone to see the dynamic we'd all been dancing around for years. At Thanksgiving this year, I didn't go. I spent it at a Friendsgiving with Jess and some other people from work, eating dry turkey and laughing until my cheeks hurt, and nobody gave a speech about who they trusted. Luke texted me a photo of Lily holding up a hand-drawn card that said, Thankful for Auntie M, with about 12 exclamation marks. Dad behaved himself, he wrote. No trust speeches. Progress, I replied. He sent back a laughing emoji then, after a pause. For what it's worth, if anyone asks me who I trust, it's you. I stared at that for a long time, then typed, I trust you too. And I meant it. I don't know if my dad will ever understand what trust actually is. For him, it's still tangled up with control, obedience, loyalty at all costs. Maybe he'll go to his grave believing he only had one trustworthy child, and it won't be me. But here's the thing I've realized. His definition doesn't get to be the only one anymore. When I think back to that moment, at Thanksgiving, Dad announced, I only trust one child. Then raised his glass toward the son who wouldn't meet my eyes. I don't just feel the sting now. I also see what I missed then. The way Luke's shoulders folded inward, the way he couldn't look at either of us, the way his hand shook on his glass. He wasn't basking in the glow. He was drowning in it. We were both trapped in different corners of the same web. Writing this here, I'm not trying to villainize my father into some cartoon monster. He's a complicated, damaged man who did the best he could with the tools he had, and those tools sucked. He hurt us, even when he thought he was protecting us. He used trust like a weapon instead of a bridge. What I am trying to do is put my version of the story somewhere he can't edit. For most of my life, he was the narrator. Emily's dramatic, Luke's reliable, I only trust one child. Now, finally, I get to say, that's not the whole truth. And maybe somewhere in there, there's a different toast being written, quietly, between siblings in coffee shops and text messages and shared therapy memes. A toast that sounds less like, I only trust one child, and more like, we're figuring this out together.